Rebecca, thank you for
Welcome
joining
to
the
TrulyFit.
TrulyFit podcast. These episodes are always fun. For my listeners, just a quick housekeeping here. Sometimes on Mondays I do an interview episode where it's me interviewing an expert in the fitness or health related area. And then sometimes on Mondays I do these episodes with my sister, who's a licensed dietitian, and we go over things that are trending in the health and the fitness and the nutrition space. But for those who haven't heard who you are and your background, just give a brief intro.
Yeah, thanks for having me. These are always fun episodes to do. So again, Rebecca Washuta, I'm a licensed dietitian. I have my own private practice in Miami Beach, and I specialize in metabolic health and weight loss.
If you are watching this episode currently, as a reminder, you can listen to them. And if you're listening to this episode, as a reminder, you can watch them. So they're on all the podcast platforms that you can imagine. And it's also on YouTube, at least the Monday episodes, not my Thursday solo episodes. To start off here, Richard Simmons died. He was an absolute icon and a legend in fitness. What do you remember about him? Are you even old enough? I think it was at the end of my childhood where I sort of remembered him, but do you remember him as a child?
For sure. Yeah, I remember probably seeing him on Oprah for the first time. You know, she was a big fan, and really, he was a legend. I think he was one of the first people who came up with the body positive movement, right? Like way before it was cool. He was getting people off their butts and encouraging them to exercise and having fun. And you know, I think the other thing that really makes him stand out is he was very in tune with the emotional aspect of having physical weight, right? So sometimes emotional weight can manifest as physical weight. And he understood that. And when he would work with people, you know, people would always be in tears, right? He would really try to, yes, we're exercising, we're having fun, but it was almost like therapy in a way, right? And getting to the heart of like, what got you here, and really unpacking that. And I think that was really beautiful.
Yeah, and he was sort of before his time, as you alluded to a little bit, where in the 80s and 90s it was the really big steroid era. And, you know, you had the Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of look that people were trying to do. It's a very bicep curl sort of era. Richard Simmons did not look like that, right? So
no, he did not.
People who did aerobics did it for health and happiness. They didn't do it for aesthetics as much, right? At least, you know, it changes over time how people want to look, right? Women in the 50s who had the ideal body type for women in the 50s is not the same as women in the 80s or 90s or 2000s, and same thing with men, right? It changes over time. But
right.
For him, it was about, like you said, a little bit more of an emotional, not just the physical, and obviously less vanity and more about health, getting up off the couch, doing something for yourself, not just about how you looked. And it's weird to tie people to fitness when you think about it. It's like I tie Tony Horton to fitness because I sort of came up with him later on in life, and people tie like Chuck Norris to fitness for some reason because he just like sold all the equipment. But Richard Simmons, I think, is deeply ingrained in the fitness and exercise, realm throughout eternity.
Yeah, for sure. And I like what you said about him being before his time. You know, I wasn't thinking about it in the sense of himself. I was thinking about what he did for others, but how brave of him, you're right, in the era of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Hulk Hogan, for him to come out and, you know, look like a kind of a scrawny guy who does yoga, right? And he's happy and he's got the crazy hair. And I think that he lived it, right? And that was really what was an inspiration to people.
Yeah. And, in my line of work too, in my world, group fitness is sort of exploded after him, I think, too. You know, I mean, you can't ever trace one thing back to a variable, right? There's always complexity here, but him being on TV and him having notoriety and doing sort of aerobics and being big in aerobics kind of pushed other bigger group fitness things down the road. So he's certainly a legend and sparked a lot of positive impact across the entirety of the fitness and health landscape.
So big question, will you be doing a Richard Simmons exercise this week in honor of him? If so, please record it.
I'm gonna do a tribute. I'm gonna wear one of his outfits.
The singlet? Okay, good.
I'll do a step class, and it's gonna be on YouTube, or maybe I'll just start an OnlyFans. I'll release it on the next, I want to talk about everyone is doing this wrong. And this is golf. Specifically, golf fitness. People are probably sick of me talking about golf. I promise you it's not golf specifically I'm talking about. It's golf fitness, or fitness that surrounds the golf world. A golf course, if you walk it, is 6 miles on average. Anywhere from 5.5 to sometimes 7.5 miles. But let's just go with 6 miles on average. But majority of people, I'm talking, this is an 80-20 ratio, ride in a cart.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
Yep.
because it's faster. Sometimes it's because they're lazy. Sometimes because they don't want to be out in the sun that long. Sometimes it's because it sort of speeds up the course. So there's various reasons behind it. But you have all of these older men who are not in that good of shape, and they might even have to, exercise and go to the gym to keep up. Which if you're already playing golf for 4 or 5 hours a day, then you got to go to the gym for an hour or two a day, right? That's your whole day.
Yeah.
If you just walked the course, you would be so healthy.
Gosh.
Imagine someone said, yeah, every day I get to swing this club, whatever, 75 to 120 times. And I'm walking on usually slightly hilly ground for 6 miles. You would be in amazing shape.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's walking is one of the most underrated physical activities. I go for walks every day, rain or shine, and it has done wonders for my mental health. But physically, there's studies out, right? It does amazing things to prevent cognitive decline and dementia. Very important in older populations. It's great for your cardiovascular health. It's great to bring down stress. I think people really turn their nose down at walking, but there's an abundant amount of evidence about its health benefits.
I've said this before, and of course, again, like I just stated in the other topic, there's a lot of variables that go with health and fitness. I don't want to ever attribute one thing to one thing, especially time, right? How old you are at any given time and what else you're doing. But I remember the best physical shape I've ever been in as far as vanity, just vanity, was when I was caddying. I was caddying pretty much in a summer. I was about 22 every single day. I was tried to caddy basically six to 7 days a week, and I would carry 2 bags, and I was walking around.
What do they weigh? I don't play golf. What does a golf bag weigh?
They vary extreme. There's an extreme variance, but anywhere from 25 to 55 pounds.
Wow.
So let's just go ahead and say 2 40-pound bags that are on my shoulders that I'm walking around with.
Right.
And then you're doing a little bit of running in between, trying to look for balls, doing whatever else. But a lot of it's just walking with the bags.
Yeah.
But you're out there, you're in the grass, you're breathing in good air, you're happy, the sun's hitting you. You can't really eat that much. Maybe a quick apple and something else because you're working.
Right.
A quick protein bar. And I was in phenomenal shape, just absolutely shredded, like 8% body fat. And I think there's something to be said that it was because of the caddying that at least added to that, not just the working out and the fact that I was 22.
Yeah, I mean, you were 22, but no, I get it. And I think, the benefit there is you can be a 22-year-old carrying 2 40-pound bags, or you can be a 72-year-old and just walk, right? So take advantage of that. I think, people have this concept in their mind of what exercise is. And exercise is me taking an hour out of my day to go to the gym or go to a class. And that's not it, right? When we look at blue zones, when we look at the longest lived populations in the world, they're just moving all day. So if you're out there on the golf course, take advantage of that, right? Take that opportunity to get as many steps in as you can, because it's all cumulative. Like you said, if you're doing 6 miles 3 times a week, what does that look like over a year? And the benefits are cumulative. They really add up.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then just to close this here, it's also a great excuse. And it's not one where you're
What, to get away from your family? What are you saying?
No, I mean, a lot of people think of it. There's memes everywhere where it's like, you leave the house for 5 hours as a golfer on the weekend. Your wife is pissed or your girlfriend's pissed and the kids are there, whatever. But it would be more of a sort of an honest endeavor if you're like, hey, I actually am getting exercise here. I'm doing something that's exercise. If you're just driving around in a cart, crushing 15 beers and smoking cigars, it's just a little bit harder to, convince people that you're doing this for the sake of your health.
Not the same.
8.8 billion. That is the estimated market value of this supplement by 2030. And this supplement is whey protein. What are your first thoughts when I say that, whether it's the financial side or the supplement side?
I believe the numbers. I think there's a big protein push now in the health and fitness industry, right? Experts like Peter Attia and Mark Hyman really, I don't want to say exaggerating, are really emphasizing the benefits of protein, especially as you get older, for metabolic health and to prevent sarcopenia. And so I think people are listening. And, whether I agree with that or not, we'll have to get into that in another episode. I think whey protein is a great option. it's different from its brother casein. So both whey protein and casein are present in milk. Casein is more inflammatory, right? So that's it has an amino acid profile that's more similar to gluten. So people who have a gluten allergy typically will also have an issue with milk. Whey is different. It actually has anti-inflammatory effects they found in the body. It has more branched chain amino acids, so it's better for muscle building. So I am a fan of whey protein, but I think the question here is not what, it's how, right? So it's how is this whey protein produced, and you always want to look for whey protein from grass-fed cows, because that's going to affect the quality of the whey protein. The same thing goes for cows as it does for humans, right? What they eat impacts what's going on in their body, and so that's your safest bet, and that's the way to go.
I'll take this from a different angle, less of the nutrition side, I guess more of the economic side, because there's a ton of money being pumped into this. They're giving consumers what they want. There's a reason why they're doing this. They see the trends coming. You need to be maybe even more mindful than you first were about what you're buying, because ultimately there's going to be people who are just doing this to make a buck. Right. So really do your due diligence on the brands that have been out there for a while, the brands that I use, like Gold Standard, which has a really good backing, has been in the bodybuilding industry for years. Make sure you're looking into this, because yes, there's nothing wrong with whey protein, but we understand the regulations behind supplements, and what is in that whey protein. You could only know if you sent that bottle out to an independent third party. Right. And not even the next bottle you buy may have something else in it, right? So you can only even test that individual bottle. So you really have to be careful. And then also, know your body, but take some time to get adjusted to it. I know I don't take any synthetic, I guess you would call it, protein outside of protein bars. I don't do any powders. I don't do any scoops.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't do any drinks. Probably not for the last 2, 3, 4, maybe even 4 years now. Yeah. Because I couldn't get adjusted to it. My body was, I had gastric issues. And a lot of people report them right away when they start taking them, and they go away.
Did you try different types of protein? Like, was it just with the whey protein that you had GI issues?
Any powder protein, basically, all the powder proteins.
Did you try plant-based protein?
I did, yeah. I tried everything from the egg yolk proteins to sort of vegan pea-based proteins. And when I say I have problems with my stomach, I don't mean like I was curled up on the ground, like, calling 911. Sure. I just meant I felt not great.
When your body feels off. Yeah.
I knew what I ate. I knew that something was off, and I don't like that feeling. And I have other options, and I just don't care enough. A lot of people probably feel the same way I did, and it's just such not a burden to them. And the sort of the risk benefit to them is worth it taking it. But for me, it's not. I don't even want to feel slightly bloated at any time.
And you think it was just the protein powder? Like when you say you have protein bars, what type of protein is that?
It varies.
But that doesn't bother your stomach, or that does, and you just deal with it.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Whether it's
interesting,
whether it's a isolate or a concentrate, whether it's whey, whether it's soy, whether it's pea, whether it's a mixture, it doesn't bother my stomach. Now, one would think, okay, so what is the major difference? So the major difference is the amount of water that you're also taking in at the same time with the powder, right? Because you can't just ingest the powder without having water. So does that have something to do with it? Sure, I don't know. But to me, it wasn't like I'm not like a biohacker. So I didn't waste any time. It's like, okay, this upsets my stomach. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do something else, and then I move on.
No, and you have the benefit that you're good in the kitchen. You enjoy cooking. You'll get up in the morning. You'll cook yourself eggs. So I tell my clients, eat real food whenever you can, if at all possible. I'd much rather you eat a meal than have a shake or a bar. But life gets busy. Life gets stressful. So if you can't, it's good to make sure you're getting those nutrients in. But always whole food over synthetics, for sure.
Pickle juice for hydration and recovery, fact or fiction? I used to do this in high school because I was told that it cured my cramping. What are your thoughts?
Well, and you didn't just do it like once. It was like every game you'd go down with a cramp, and then the trainer would come out and give you pickle juice. So what do you think from a firsthand experience? Do you feel like it helped? I mean, you should have been drinking it before the game, before the cramping set in, but... You feel like it was
Because I had
useful?
such a problem with it, and I've done my research on cramping in general. My it's hard to look at this from like that perspective because I know so much more now. Do I think it helped at that time? Maybe a little bit placebo-y, but I don't necessarily think it helped. No. I am not against using it for any reason. I do think it helps with hydration. I just think people think that the main reason they're cramping is because of hydration, and I disagree with that sentiment.
What? Why? And yeah,
Why?
expand on that. Why do you think people are cramping?
Okay, so first I'll do like the practical, and then I'll talk about maybe more of the science behind it. So the practical reasons are, okay, what muscles cramp? If your body doesn't dehydrate in specific parts of your body, right? So,
Yeah.
so let's say I'm going on a run. No runner has ever had their bicep cramp.
Right.
No runner has ever had their trap cramp. These are all muscles. They all have
Yeah.
cells in them. Those cells have
Sure.
water in them, right? So why is my calf muscle cramping specifically? Well, it's because it's overworked. And overworked in which way? Is it overworked the actual musculature overworked? That's not really what they found out. They found out it's sort of the neurons that are being fired to the area or in excess. So there was a doctor, his name is Dr. McKinnon, and he basically did this, I don't know if it was like longitudinal as far as how the duration, but he, a lot of people were in the study.
Yeah.
And he put together this elixir that had like hot sauce and capsicum and ginger and cinnamon, these things that are like really like potent, right?
Yeah.
And you would take a shot of that while you like in the midst of you thinking you were going to cramp, right? So I'm an exerciser, and I'm like, I think I'm on the verge of cramping. I know what it feels like. And that shot would take away the cramps. And the thought behind it and the science behind it was that now my brain is focused on all that this potent flavor and taste, right? And it's like my tongue is now sending signals to my brain, and it's overriding those like extra nerves and neurons that are being sent to my calf, which is being overworked at the time. And
so it's almost the equivalent of like when you get a tick, like something like when your thumb flinches or something like that. You're just saying it's like a misfiring of neurons, and so you can sort of reset your nervous system by doing something extreme, like taking a shot like that.
Yeah, I mean, accessing fire of motor neurons is what I would call it. Now, is that the only reason? Can that be done if there was no physical activity and slight hydration or lack thereof involved, right? These things are complex. So I'm sure there's a bunch of variables being thrown here together. But what I do think is important is going back to the practicality of it, is that your bicep will never cramp while you're running. And the reason is because
because it's not in use, right? You're not using your bicep to run.
And I think we need to put that into perspective. Now, if we're just talking about hydration for the sake of hydration and not talking about cramps.
Yeah.
Pickle juice, you probably would know more about it than me. It's just the ratios of maybe potassium and magnesium and salt, which are electrolytes. Am I right? Like
for sure. Yeah. So it has, obviously it's very high in sodium for anyone who's ever had pickle juice, and it does have small amounts of potassium and magnesium. So if you like pickle juice, excellent. It is a good way to stay hydrated, because being dehydrated doesn't just mean you're deficient in water. It means you're deficient in electrolytes, right? You're sweating out electrolytes, and they're important for maintaining water balance in your body. So you do have to replenish them. I don't know if it is the most optimal electrolyte drink, because it does have pretty low levels of potassium and magnesium. That being said, if you enjoy it, go for it. There are a lot of good electrolyte drinks out there. I like the LMNT. But yeah, people really need to think about that. You get up in the morning and you have a glass of water, or you think you're hydrating with water after a workout, and you definitely sweat out more than water. And so it's really important to replenish those electrolytes. And then in the same vein, if you're working out, you're obviously someone who's concerned about their weight, right? And wants to at least manage their weight, if not lose weight. And consuming adequate amounts of salt is really good for reducing your sugar cravings. And so I have clients that, are really craving snacks at night, and I say, have an LMNT. And I know it sounds counterintuitive if you're craving sweet to have something salty, but it actually is really useful.
Let's not look at this from the biohacker perspective. Let's look at this just from the general public. Do I ever need to be worried about the amount of water I'm drinking being a bad thing, or me flushing out electrolytes, if I have sort of like an average diet where I am having salt, right? So somebody who's like, yeah, I'm having lunch meat and I'm having some ketchup on my eggs and I'm having these things that already have like salt in them, do I need to be concerned that I'm drinking too much water and flushing everything out of my body, or is that sort of like almost impossible?
No, I mean, it is possible. You can die from drinking too much water, but it is extreme. You have to be like waterboarded. You have to be drinking gallons and gallons. So, but it's not just that the water you drink flushes out the electrolytes. It's like through sweat and through, through normal urine. So it's important for people to keep in mind that when you're dehydrated, it's about more than just water. So however you do it, some of my clients don't like the electrolyte drinks. So you can start by putting salt in your coffee or tea in the morning, just a little bit. People are afraid of salt because there was this propaganda for a long time that it caused high blood pressure, when in reality, only 15% of the population has sodium-induced hypertension. Sodium is actually, it's a natural part of our bodies. It's in the ocean. Like there's nothing more natural than sodium, right? Sugar was the culprit all these years, and we've been blaming salt. I'm a big fan of salt. So no, I don't think you necessarily need to worry about it, but it's something to stay mindful of.
I got this from our late mother, but I put a pinch of salt, iodized salt, and cinnamon, maybe more than a pinch, in the top of my coffee. I use a percolator.
Yeah.
And it makes my coffee taste so much better. It takes
cuts the bitterness, right?
Out.
Yeah.
And then the cinnamon also like kind of seeps through. I'll use cinnamon sticks here and there when I have them. If I don't, I just use regular powdered cinnamon, and it really does add a lot to your coffee for, just a quick pinch of two different things.
I love that. That's great.
Spinal Energetics. This is the latest in health nonsense. Are you familiar with it? Do you want me to take the lead on this?
So I am familiar with it. There was Gwyneth Paltrow had a special on Netflix a couple of years ago. It was like Goop documentary. So it was her doing all sorts of health type stuff, right? She went to Mexico and did ayahuasca. Not her, but her team. They went to Alaska with Wim Hof. Wim Hof? And did the ice plunges. So she did, or her team did, this Spinal Energetics. And I know what you're going to say here. I know you're a skeptic. So watch the documentary. But I think it's interesting. Truthfully, I don't know how it works, but I will say this. I also can't tell you how the internet works. I have been using the internet for the better part of my life. And if I were to explain to an alien, here's how the internet works, I have no idea. Wi-Fi, like what waves, things. I've taken physics. I still cannot understand or explain to anyone how that works.
Somebody can. So
somebody
I have a
but
engineer who works with me, and he can break down every little nuance to why the internet works how it works.
Right, but 50 years ago they couldn't. Maybe here's a better example. Some of the drugs on the market today work, right? There's clinical trials. We've proven that they're effective, and we don't fully understand the mechanism of action. We don't know. They're postulating, they're guessing, and they'll say that if you go into the prescribing information and look in the fine print, they don't know how it works. They're not 100% sure. So I think certainty is not always, I don't know. It doesn't always have to be there for me. I'm a little bit more woo. I'm a little bit more open-minded. So if it helps people, go for it. But don't.
I don't disagree. I think you're going to be surprised. I do not disagree.
Okay.
My issue is in what you call the reason behind it working, and you have to call it a placebo, because you can say that it works, but you can't say that it works for any other reason but a placebo until you have evidence otherwise. Does that make sense? So as long as you're calling a spade, placebos are great. They work in a lot of different ways. We have a lot of instances. You've actually talked about it on this podcast before, of like the studies behind placebos. But we can't claim science where there is no science to be looked at, right? So if you're going to make a large claim, there needs to be some sort of backing. So I can't deny that it doesn't work, because if somebody's telling me that it worked for them, then that's great. But not the literal you, they can't tell me that it works because of the body and science and electric pulse impulses and energy and all of these things. And I think we're getting ahead of ourselves just because our audience probably don't know what we're talking about. Let's explain what Spinal Energetics is first. You'll see these videos. They were made by a chiropractor, a female chiropractor. Her name evades me, but I'll try to pull it up on the screen real quick. Dr. Sarah Jane, and she's the founder of Spinal Energetics. And basically, you'll see people laying flat on their back on what looks like a normal chiropractor massage table. And there's people waving their hands over them as if they were giving them a a virtual massage.
It's like Reiki. Have you heard of Reiki?
Yes.
Similar.
And their bodies are moving in all different ways, and they're saying they're changing their energies and they're taking away pain from their bodies. Now, I will say, whether this is offensive or not, to people on either side of this, it doesn't look much different to me than when you go to an evangelical church and a pastor has his hands over someone who's in a wheelchair saying, you must stand up and rise, right?
Yeah.
It has that same sort of performative energy where both people have to be involved in the performance in order for it to work. If I can lay down and they can do it to me and I'm not involved in the performance, then I'll believe it.
Well, that's the test. We gotta get you over to Spiritual Energetics and see if this thing is real.
because let me tell you some things I couldn't not do. If you gave me an LSD tab, I couldn't be like, nah, nothing's happening. I promise you, I would trip, right? So if I stood there and I didn't feel anything afterwards, it's like, well, if both people have to be involved in this process, then we at least have to admit there's a little bit, if not a continual amount of placebo going on.
I wonder if there is someone out there who could explain it in terms of physics, right? Like particle physics. I didn't get that far. I took physics, 100, whatever I needed to do for pre-med in college. But, there's a lot that you and I probably don't understand, right? I don't even think I can explain E = MC squared. Like, I don't know. So I wonder if there's someone out there who could actually explain it in terms of atoms and electrons and neutrons. And it would be interesting to hear someone at least postulate about like what potentially could be happening, because there's no debate that we're made up of atoms, right? We're made up of energy. The majority of our body, right? Because if you look at what an atom is, it's mostly space, right? It's the electron and then or it's the nucleus and then it's space and then the electrons. So I don't understand enough about it, but I'd be really interested to get like a professional's assessment of it.
Yeah. Well, time will tell. We will do a further deep dive into this and see if there's some sort of person who has the right science background who could at least strongman or steelman my argument and just be like, well, this actually, because of this energy and this force and this, it could be X, Y, and Z. I don't think anyone can prove it, but they could at least sort of throw a barrier between what I'm saying and what they're saying. But also, I think part of the issue is if that was true, they should use that language, because the language is always like,
right, really woo woo,
and it's so woo woo. It's like, well, if you have science to back it, then use the science. That's going to help you increase your notoriety and your believability. Sure. Kevin James' fasting claim. I will tell you what he said and see if you buy it. He said before one of his movies, he actually said he's done this multiple times, that for 41 days he drank nothing but water with like sea salt in it, and he lost 60 pounds. Do you believe that that's possible? How unhealthy is that, if that is possible, or is he just completely full of shit?
Yeah, I watched the clip because I was like, there's no way. So he did say that. I think it's possible. I think if you're going to lie, you usually don't go to extremes like that, right? He'd be like, oh, I've been walking a lot or doing some cardio, right? You're not going to go out on a limb where people are really going to question you. So that's why I think it's more than just him being on Ozempic. Fasting for 40 days. And he said, he's like, when I lock my brain on something, I can just do it. Obviously it's not something that is safe for the general public. It's definitely something that needs to be done under medical supervision. He didn't say that. So I'm assuming he was, working with a doctor or a dietitian to do this. It can be dangerous. It can be really dangerous to fast for that long. On the flip side, if you are working with a, healthcare professional and a healthcare team, there are these, retreats and wellness spas you can go to where they can put you on a water-only fast. And I know on the surface that might sound crazy, but there's been a ton of research that has come out about how beneficial fasting is specifically for autoimmune conditions, like one for weight loss, obviously, but for autoimmune conditions, for MS, for lupus, all different types of autoimmune conditions, because fasting actually is immunosuppressive. So it's going to, reduce the immune system. And people have actually gone into remission. And I'm talking about, clinical trials out of Stanford. This isn't woo-woo stuff. The other thing that fasting does is it stimulates autophagy in your body, right? So that's when your body is sort of like a self-cleanup, and it goes around and it can get rid of senescent cells. I'm not sure if you've heard of senescent cells. They're basically like zombie cells in the body, right? So they've died, they're releasing these inflammatory cytokines, and they're just kind of hanging out, and they're causing all these issues. So when you are fasting, your body goes around and gets rid of them. So there can be a lot of benefits. I feel like 4 days is extreme. And then if you listen to the end of the clip, he says, but I gained it all back. And so the other idea is, if you're doing this to lose weight, it's not sustainable, because the minute you start eating again, you're going to gain all that weight back. So, I think this is super extreme. I definitely wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but I think there are a lot of health benefits with other versions, like intermittent fasting or like a fasting mimicking diet.
All great insights. I just wanted to add, I think there's a lot of people who fast almost as like a mental challenge.
Yeah.
Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know, but I can tell that it's more of a mental challenge. Can I do this for a certain period of time and not eat? Yes, it's healthy, but I'm really just challenging myself. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. I'm not judging. I do, though, wish maybe...
Have you ever fasted for a significant amount of time?
Yeah, but for me, what I was just getting to is it's more of an art than a science, meaning I don't say like, I'm going to fast for 38 hours from Friday this time to just... I just like, sometimes I'm like, I wake up in the morning, I don't really feel that hungry.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm doing something that day where I don't have like access to food really easily. And like in the moment, I make the decision to just fast. I'm like, okay, I've gone this long. I didn't eat. I'm just going to continue to not eat for the rest of the day. I'm just going to eat in the morning, unless for some odd reason I feel like I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight because my stomach's going to be so empty.
Yeah.
So those are my fasting instances where it just sort of happens. I'm like, okay, this is a good time to do it. I don't over plan the fasts. To each their own. We all run differently, but I do wish there was a component of that where people just said, I'm gonna feel this out. Like, how do I feel in the morning? I don't always need to eat in the morning. And if I feel like, hey, I can go this whole day without eating, maybe then you challenge yourself rather than be so strict and regimented with your fasting times.
Yeah, and I want to build on what you said as far as it being like an art and really, a show of, I don't know, mental toughness. But there's also evidence that says if you are hungry, you're actually a little bit more focused, right? Because if you think about, like, from an evolutionary point of view, if I haven't eaten in a couple days and I'm very hungry, I'm going to be like looking at my surroundings, and my eyes are going to be open. I'm going to be focused on whatever comes nearby that I can eat, right? So there are a lot of biohackers and people in Silicon Valley that say that they fast for like the mental clarity. And I've never fasted long enough to experience that. I don't think I've done intermittent fasting. I've done calorie restriction here and there, but when you get into the one day plus fast, they said there's this like level of mental clarity that you achieve that's pretty remarkable. So just another benefit if you're someone who can do it. But again, it's not for everyone, and the results don't last, right? It's not a long-term solution for anybody.
My new hydrogen water bottle.
Ooh, do you have it?
I have it. We're going to start with the bad. The bad is, you're supposed to press this button and it goes through the process, which I'll explain in a second. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure it's broken because I've only had it for 4 days, but this light should be blue for 3 minutes during this process. And lately it's been turning off after 15 seconds, but like it just did right there. So don't buy
maybe because you only have a little bit of water in there. So it
could be, or it could be because I bought the cheapest one that you could on Amazon.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, that doesn't work.
Instead of actually getting the more expensive one. But let me just read off what the science is a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
For the listeners who have no idea what hydrogen water is, the kind that I have, and the only kind that so far that I've read that you should get, is the PEM or the SPE. Okay, that is the proton exchange membrane It helps with the electrolysis of water. And then the SPE is the solid polymer electrolyte. And that's how it basically takes the hydrogen into your water, right? There's cheaper versions of this that do it where there could potentially be chlorine in there and other things building up, where this version does not have that. Most of the water bottles now do have this one, but you just want to be positive you have the PEM SPE versions of these, not the cheaper ones. Now, the benefits of hydrogen water, I'll let you talk about. But first, I just want to talk about the technology. Yeah. You simply press a button, it adds the hydrogen to your water, and after the light goes off, which is supposed to be 3 minutes, your water is now, extra hydrogenated. Now, can I claim that every single bottle is doing what it's supposed to do, or has the amount that it's supposed to have in it, or that the bottle itself is keeping in all of those gases and they don't just escape, they don't stay in the water? I don't know. That's way above my pay grade. I don't know. But what I do know is it's cheap enough where I think it's worth a trial, given the science behind the hydrogen water. But you can talk about the actual science behind it.
I'm curious, how long have you had it? How long have you been using it?
Probably a little bit less than a week, 5 or 6 days, but very, very often. Did I feel more energy the first few days when I was drinking it? Yes. But I will also say I was drinking more water than I usually did. So it's really hard if you're not comparing one to one.
That's interesting because, they've done studies getting people to drink more water. And one of the best ways is giving them something novel, right? Giving them a new water bottle. It's going to dry your eyes in. You're going to wind up drinking more water. But the energy thing is interesting because, one of the biggest benefits is that it's supposed to improve physical activity and endurance. Like, it's supposed to reduce fatigue. And so I wonder, as someone who works out often, if you've felt that, even if it's placebo, like after workouts, are you recovering different, or can you go longer?
My feeling was much more just day-to-day clarity, no 2 p.m. crashes, just that sort of energy, as opposed to like doing a few more reps in the gym. So that's what I took from it. But again, that's just 5 or 6 days of it in, and then how much of it is placebo, how much of it is me drinking just more water in general. But I do know that there's now literally thousands of studies that have been done on taking in this hydrogenated water and how it is better for athletes and for, clarity of mind and everything else. But that doesn't mean that my water has that amount of hydrogen in it to that extent where it's going to give me that benefit, or if the average person ends up drinking enough. Right, if you use it, I imagine, I don't know what it is. You only drink one canister of this, which is like 16 ounces a day. It might not be worthwhile.
Right. Yeah. There needs to be more. There are a lot of studies out, but there needs to be more clarification on how much you need to drink. And then they also haven't been able to pin down. Okay, here's one. They haven't been able to pin down the mechanism of action with this either. So the good news is, with everything I read, there are no safety concerns. So if you're willing to spend the money, I think there's only an upside. It makes sense that hydrogen acts as an antioxidant, which is going to reduce inflammation. It's found to be, cardioprotective. It has.
Well, see, I was under the impression they did know the mechanism. So I thought it was because free radicals, which are not bonded to anything, and the extra hydrogen automatically bonds to free radicals, which means you have less free radicals in your body.
It's not. So that's how antioxidants work in general. Like, that's how vitamin C works, right? It's going to bind to the free radicals and reduce oxidative stress. But it's not widely agreed upon by experts that that's exactly how this is working. So it's thought to be an antioxidant, but I think there still needs to be more research in the field. But in general, there's no downside, right? Other than money out of your pocket. It even has, been shown to have anti-cancer effects, and it can improve your sleep. There's countless studies. So I think it's definitely worth a try.
I've had multiple podcast episodes where I had on people who were into this water space. Analema water was one of them that comes to mind. There's been at least one or two others. And I think there is going to be huge changes in the next 10 or 15 years. these people were really, really big science backgrounds who were going out of their way to quit their jobs and start these giant water companies is not just because they think there's a dollar to be made,
Right.
but they have the scientific belief that water is so important and there has to be better water, right?
Yeah.
Not better water meaning like we're going to find better water than we currently have, but
We can make it. Yeah.
yeah, there's got to be levels to this. So why not, take all the science we can to make sure that that happens. So I think there's going to be huge strides made in this. One of those things where we look back maybe, when our kids are 20 or 30 and be like, I can't believe we were drinking sometimes tap water. Like, I cannot believe it. And then we're going to have this like specialized water that everybody drinks. And I hope, the corporate interests don't take over. And I hope this just becomes a model of health where we do find the best water and every single person has access to it.
That's cool. Yeah, you should make a note. Like, let's check in a month or two and see how you feel and see if you notice anything different, because it's not just, physically good for you. It also has been shown, right, to improve mental clarity, liver detox if you're out drinking. So I'm interested to see how it goes.
So far, I'm not very happy. In the last 6 days since I've got this water bottle, I've developed conjunctivitis in my right eye.
Oh, no. Well, you can't even tell. Is it from your daughter, Mackenzie?
I'm blaming it on the water bottle, of course, right? I know there's no science behind that, but we don't need the science. It's just like Spinal Energetics. I'm going to blame the hydrogen energy getting into my eyeball and causing this issue. No, Mackenzie doesn't have it, my daughter. So I don't know what it's from exactly, to be honest with you.
Were you changing diapers and rubbing your eyes?
I don't have a formal diagnosis. I'm diagnosing myself. What also could have happened is I had a small patch of like eczema near my eye, and I used hydrocortisone 2.5%.
Oh, you can't use that on your face. No.
So I'm wondering if at nighttime when I put it on, I rubbed it into my eyeball, or I sweated it into my eyeball, and that's what's happening. So that could
don't use steroids on your face. That's no good. I want to go back to the water for a second. I have two questions. One is, does it taste any different? And two is, on the topic of water, what water are you putting in there? What's your water purification situation at home?
I was told that you should only put higher end water in there because the higher end water has the minerals that are going to somehow synergistically work with the hydrogen ions. Again, this could all be nonsense, but this is what I was told. So this is the path that I'm following. It can't hurt you, right? I buy these giant jugs of, like, I think the brand in Texas is called Ozark. And it's just like, fresh spring water from, Target or Walmart or wherever else. Like, it's not, it tastes delicious, and I'm sure that has extra minerals in it. That's why it tastes good. And that's what I use. Can I taste a difference? 100%. Yes. I'm very confident that if you were to give me that water poured out into something else versus tap water versus Brita versus that same water before going in there, that I would be able to taste the difference.
Can you describe it, the taste, or no? It's just, I know it's hard to describe the taste of water, but does it taste more like...
I think I have a good adjective for this.
Okay.
And some people might get it. Some people go, this guy's crazy. Like ozone-y. Like, like sometimes when you're like when you're outside and there's like fog or there's mist.
Uh-huh.
Or you just had a really heavy rain.
Yeah.
Like a really heavy rain, right?
Yeah.
There's just like a smell in the air.
Huh.
That's what I would say.
That's really interesting. All right, I do want to tell you about your water situation. This will be helpful for everyone. So, if possible, you want to buy nationally distributed water, because water that is like bottled in Texas and sold in Texas, water that's bottled in state and sold in state is not subject to federal regulations. So I don't know what kind of regulations they have there in Texas, but it's not going to be monitored or tested in the same way that, say, Aquafina is or Dasani is, right? Something that's made in New York and distributed everywhere. So that's something to keep in mind. And then spring water is good, but you just have to also be careful about fracking because the water can be contaminated. So there's not a lot of good options, right? Because then there's the microplastics. There's an issue with everything you can get into. But like a quick tip is, if you look on the back of the bottle and it says made and distributed in Florida, then I try to avoid that, and I just try to go for the national
This is
nationally
one
distributed
area where
brand.
I'm much more hippy dippy than you. We do a role reversal. For me, water's all about taste. I taste a bunch of different waters,
Yeah.
and I don't care if there happens to be pesticides in it. If the water is delicious, I trust my instincts, and that's the water that I drink.
Okay. All right.
So, but no, that is good information. I will look at that. I mean, I have no idea if it is bottled in Texas. My assumption is it is, because I think it's a Texas brand. So that is good information to know, to see, or at least to look up.
Yeah.
Are Texas requirements different in the bottling process than the federal government? Are they less stringent, more stringent, the same?
Yeah.
Longer warm-ups, please. I am angry with everybody in the fitness community just for not talking about warming up enough, right? I know it's boring, warm-ups, nobody wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to tell you the perfect way to do a deadlift, or which muscles are firing when you're doing this, or the new cheat code to make your triceps look good, or just these little nuances of how to flare the rope out at the end to make sure your bicep is engaged. But nobody wants to tell you basically how to not get injured. And the most important part of exercise is a warm-up. I believe people do not warm up long enough. I believe people make warm up too much of a science, not enough of an art, which we've talked about just before in another topic. Yeah. And I believe people do not prime muscles, and instead they just warm up. So let's go through that sort of backwards. Priming of a muscle or of muscles or of exercises means I'm doing a version of the exercise with no weight prior to doing the exercise. So for example, you might say, I want to go to the gym today and work out my back muscles and my arm muscles, Steve. So I'm going to do some back rows, I'm going to do some bicep curls, I'm going to do some tricep extensions, I'm going to do some shoulder presses. But your warm-up is 12 minutes on the treadmill. Well, that doesn't make any sense because you haven't warmed up any of the musculature in which you're going to be using on that given day, right? So could that warm-up have started with 12 minutes? Sure. But there needed to be a continuation where you're warming up those specific muscles. So what do you do? Well, first, it's usually just getting blood flow to the area. How do you do that? You can do range of motion things, right? If it's your shoulders, you're moving your arms around in circles. If it's something like your triceps and your chest, you're doing a lighter version of whatever you're going to be doing. So maybe for a female like you who's not going to be benching 225, you just simply go up against a wall on an incline and you do like wall push-ups.
Yeah.
Right? So you're working those muscles. You're getting not only like the neurons firing there, but you're getting the blood flow and you're getting those muscles primed and ready to go before the exercise. Some people just simply use really light weights. So if you were doing, again, just to use chest press as the example, instead of using, let's say my first set would usually be with 60-pound dumbbells. Well, maybe I do my first set with 25-pound dumbbells. And I go really slow and I focus on full range of motion. This needs to be done more often. And then moving now to the art, not the science. Don't go into a warm-up being like, this is my warm-up. Go into a warm-up saying, I'm going to warm up until my body feels like I'm ready to go. Yeah. Because you're going to be different on any given day of how your body's going to respond to something. Some days you're going to need 4 or 5 more minutes of a warm-up, and some days you won't, and you'll be primed to go. So make it more of an art, less of a science. Make sure you're priming those muscles, and make it a centerpiece of your workout for exercise and, injury prevention.
I love that. Yeah, you made a good point in the beginning that people don't do it because it's boring, right? Like, but listen, present company included. I definitely don't warm up as much as I should. And, it's the same thing with nutrition. Everyone wants the sexy fad. Everyone wants the HIIT training, right? Everyone wants like the quick thing that's going to get them in shape, make them look great. No one wants to do the basics, warming up, stretching, drinking enough water, right? Eating vegetables. Like here are the core building blocks that you need. And nobody wants to do that because it's not a fad. It's not, it's not interesting, but the boring stuff matters.
There's 2 things that you can do and almost everybody likes one of these 2 things. So that's why I'm bringing these 2 things up. If you don't like one of these 2 things, well, you'll have to think outside the box. Almost everybody likes to dance, and almost everybody likes or box or kickbox or fight, right? Those are 2 things, right? Maybe guys have a little bit more predisposition to like fighting related things, and girls have a little bit more predisposition dependent upon your specific demeanor to dance. Those are both fantastic warm-ups where you're working every single muscle, basically, right? So if you just stand in place and do like kickboxing, and if you just stand in place and do some form of dancing, where you're using your arms and legs, which is most dancing,
Right.
for long enough, that is like a really good low scale, easy to do warm up for everybody. I would say dancing around for 8 minutes is 5 times better than going on the treadmill for 8 minutes.
Because you're
If
using more muscles. Yeah, for
you're
sure.
using more muscles, you're moving in all the different directions, right? So we're moving in transverse plane, which is more circular, and you do that obviously in shadow boxing and kickboxing, and I think you can make it fun, right? More, it doesn't have to be not fun. I think that's an excuse, and I also think ultimately we want to get the most out of our workout. The way you get the most out of your workout always is to have all those muscles primed so that you can really push it. You can end up doing less sets because you can really push it. So
Yeah.
if you jump into your exercises too quick, you're going to be sort of behind the 8 ball in your workout, and your workout's going to have to maybe take longer, and it's not going to be as productive. So just do your warm up, people.
Yeah. Well, I've seen your warm up videos, kickboxing, shadow boxing. So why don't you give us one while you're dancing next time? Can you record that? Can I get a Steve Washuta dance warm up video?
I'll do Richard. I'll do the Richard Simmons aerobic workout video, dance video, and then a Richard Simmons kickboxing video, and I'll release them all.
Amazing. You'll inspire a lot of people.
Lastly, here, just a quick PSA. Stop chasing young clients. I'm sure you might agree with this. Young clients, for 3 different reasons. They don't have money. They're so easy to work with that you're not challenging yourself. And you can gain a lot of wisdom from older people when you start working from older people, just in general, right? You don't have to. I'm not telling anyone, if your absolute love is to work with 19-year-olds with eating disorders, with 16-year-olds who are trying to get to their high school football team, do what you love, right? Everyone has a niche. What I'm telling you is, if you're someone struggling in the fitness world, in the nutrition world, in the yoga world, it's probably because you don't have enough older clients. The older clients talk, you do a good job, they're going to get you other clients. Younger clients don't do that. To build your business specifically, go after older clients. You're making a mistake if you're not going after the population between 50 and 75, and you're really trying to get the population who is 18 to 30.
100%. Yeah, I wish that you had shared that wisdom with me when I was getting started, because I thought I'm going to look for clients who are like me. So I'm going to look for clients who are like young women. Maybe they want to lose weight before their wedding. Maybe they're looking to lose weight after having their babies. And I do still work with some of that population, but older folks, one, have money and don't bat an eye at your prices, right? They have time. Some of them are retired, or they don't have kids in the house that they need to, take to practice and school every day. Just this past year, I've been working with, I would say 90% of the clients I'm working with are men in between the ages of 50 and 70. And they're my favorite clients. They listen, they have time to do the things. There's so much wisdom to share. It's been really great. And I wish I had thought about that earlier on in my career, because it's been so much easier. It's been so much easier and so much more enjoyable for me to work with an older population.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a huge change. This is like more of my sort of economics brain in society, where younger people are helping out older people. I think there's a lot of jobs that can be created. You think about older people from, let's say, transport perspective. They're so reliant after a certain age on their family having to bring them from point A to point B, right? They don't maybe feel, I know people are going to be like, well, you have Uber, but they don't feel comfortable using Uber, or they don't know how to use Uber because they're not really taught how to use electronics. That's another whole industry where it's like, why are we so focused on building out these platforms that help 18-year-olds? It's like, we need to build out also technology platforms that are really easy to use and useful for seniors, people of a certain age. So I think there's a whole industry that's going to be changing now that there's a big group of those seniors waiting there, and there's not a lot of jobs to be had down the chain. Well, I think that you're going to see that turning around, where we're building out platforms, electronic platforms for seniors. There's going to be more rideshare things for seniors. There's going to be more personal training and nutrition for that population, and I think it's going to be great for everybody.
I hope so. Yeah, because it's, how much information and wisdom is lost because we, don't give our senior citizens the respect they deserve. And it's cultural, right? Because other countries like Japan, it's very different. So yeah, I think it's a mindset shift, but I think it's definitely moving in that direction here, which is great.
Well, Beck, thank you for your time. As a reminder, everyone, if you're listening to this, you could also watch this episode on the YouTubes. That's what us old people say, the YouTubes. This has been an episode of the TrulyFit podcast. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you.